So your tutelage to get up there is measured in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And you're going to spend that kind of money before you truly know if you're talented or not. So, of all professional sports, I think that motor racing is one of the ones that's least understood. Most people that watch racing on TV think that everyone is rich and is making a ton of money at it. But the reality is that the people who earn their primary income, people that can truly call themselves a professional, are statistical anomalies in the sport. Of all the sports, the least expensive one to get from starting off to the professional level is basketball. And the numbers measured in an under $10,000 from getting from the beginning all the way to a paid professional in the NBA. And if you've hung around a racetrack at all, you know that $10,000 doesn't go very far at all. In fact, a lot of people dream about maybe becoming a racing driver and maybe becoming a Formula One driver. That's the ultimate dream. And having spent quite a bit of time racing internationally and speaking to the people that have done the journey and what the journey looks like, I can tell you that in 2023, if you have a child, and let's just say I want to take them to Formula One, I want to take them through karts, all of the sub formulas, the paying of everything to get to Formula One. And let's assume a perfect ascension, meaning that they win a championship every step of the way, all the way up. The number is north of $20 million US. At that age, you can imagine that that money normally comes from either family or some kind of family connection. Because when you are 12, 13, 14 years old, I don't know of a lot of people that have $20 million sitting in the bank. In addition, there's the thought that, okay, fine, my kid is good, we'll get sponsors. Well, the reality is that in the lower level formulas, the cost to participate is so incredibly high that the exposure available to you is nowhere in line with the costs associated with doing it. A lot of people don't know that just high level go karting starts at $300,000 a year. And I can promise you that showing a $300,000 return on investment to a commercial sponsor at the karting level is left side of impossible. As I tell a lot of people, buying lottery tickets is the better option. I'm an example of somebody that managed to do some racing at a pretty decent level without coming from any family money of any kind. When I was young, I just dreamt about cars and racing cars every waking hour of the day. And admittedly, I started the better part of 10 years late at the age of 16. And at 16 years of age, it was actually the day of my birthday. I did a driving school for karting that accumulated with a little race that day. And it was my very first race ever on the day of my 16th birthday. And looking back on it, I was easily 10 years too old to get started. But the great thing about being that age is that you believe that the impossible is possible and you throw your whole heart and life into it. And it has been an absolutely awesome journey that I'd love to share with you guys. So today, as I sit here, 2023, about 3 weeks ago, I made the decision to retire from racing after 31 years. Not often are you lucky enough in life to get the opportunity to decide your fate. But in this particular case, I was able to decide to stop racing. So at 16 years of age, I got a go-kart, bought it used from a local buy and sell newspaper, and fixed it up a little bit with my dad and decided to go racing. And immediately at that stage, my parents said, "We know where this is going. We're out." And I have no hard feelings towards them. I have a brother. They have to treat us equally. It's only fair. And I come from a nice, middle class background, and the money just wasn't there to pursue racing. I decided to focus myself absolutely entirely on getting the money to go racing. Now, in regional club level karting, getting a few $1,000s here and there is not that difficult. And, you turn all the wrenches yourself and you're able to get yourself along. And so I was able to do 3 years of karting and then work side jobs and collect a little bit of money together and then move towards some full size cars. So I moved over into full-size cars in 1995. Ironically, my teammate that year was a well-known Shark Tank personality. He actually taught me a very, very important life lesson. And that was he's a hyper competitive guy. And in the first race of the year, he beat me. And he was happy to come on over and say, hey, let's look at the times, how did it go, and whatever. And in the second race of the year, after qualifying, I outqualified him. I remember clearly, like it was yesterday. He went and picked up the timesheets, looked at him, and all I could see was his car driving away. And it taught me how, in a competitive environment, you really kind of have to rely on yourself because the other people, they're all well and good when they're beating you, but when you become a threat to them, it can be a bit of an issue. After doing a little bit of car racing, I kind of worked my way up and up and was able to get more sponsors. And I was lucky because the sponsors that were supporting me were people that weren't really necessarily seeing a great commercial value out of the sponsorship, but they were enthusiasts, and the sport relies on enthusiasts. They were enthusiasts that were happy to live vicariously through what I was doing, and it's always nice to try to help a young driver out. And I managed to get myself up to a certain point, and at the same time, I stayed in school and did my studies, and I finished university. And when I finished university, I decided to really go all in and move to Europe and see how far we could take this. So, sold everything I had, hopped on a plane, and I went to Italy. And why Italy? I had made some contacts and I had the possibility of instructing at the Lamborghini Driving Academy and be one of their instructors. But the problem that happened was when I landed in Italy and they started doing my papers and looking at my paperwork, they saw that I had my Italian passport, but I had never done my military service. Now, at that time, 20 plus years ago, that was an issue. And so I couldn't legally work there. And so I found myself without work and I eventually found myself over to England, where I was able to start up teaching driving schools, being around racing, and then hustling to try to get a little bit of money to go racing. Later that year, my grandmother passed away and left me a tiny amount of money. And what you do at that age is any money that you get, like the addict that you are, you put it into racing. So I grabbed that money and I spent it to do a small championship in England and really enjoyed myself and did okay and learned a lot of valuable lessons and met some fabulous people. And the following year, I was kind of planning and thinking about what to do next. And I remember very, very clearly standing in the middle of an airfield where I was working, teaching a driving school, looking around and seeing, boy, there's a lot of people around me that I'm working with that are younger than me, possibly more talented than me, better connected than me, have more money than me, and they're not getting anywhere either. And at that moment, maybe being a control freak or whatever the case is, I told myself I didn't want to leave my life to chance in that way. A lot of racing drivers hang around the racetrack hoping that a rich guy comes along and takes them on a magic carpet ride. I didn't want to be buying lottery tickets hoping to win. So it was at that moment that I made a conscious decision to stop racing, to stop pursuing it, to try to be a professional, to try to earn my living at it, and to approach it as what's known as a gentleman driver. So what is a gentleman driver? A gentleman driver is what actually makes up the biggest part of the racing world. And that is a person that operates even up to the very high professional level, but they are paying their way to race. So there's an expression in racing that says, how fast do you want to go? And it's followed by how much do you want to spend. So essentially in the racing world, if you want to buy your way through racing, you can get seats for as little as $500 a weekend, and it can go all the way up to 50, 60, $70,000 a weekend. Within that range, there's every flavor under the sun. So as my company was able to make a little bit more money, and the ironic thing is that occasionally I would go to the racetrack and people would see me as, oh, there's that guy's only racing because he has money. And the irony of it all was that I had money because I really, really wanted to go racing. And the reality was that there wasn't really a lot of money there because it was all being used up in racing. It's not like buying a sports car where at the end of it, you're left with a sports car that has residual value. There, you're just left with, noise and some really good memories. So one of the things that a lot of people think is that the racing that they see on television, everybody you see on TV are millionaires and they're making a ton of money and all that. But the reality is that at the high level, there are drivers that are bringing money to the team in order to be able to work. Imagine going to, the New York Yankees and saying, "Here's $3 million, let me play." But that is the expectation in racing, as much as it's the absurdity in every other sport. There's also this misconception that a driver is talented. And yes, drivers are talented. But the problem is that it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to discover if you truly are talented. Because when you start racing, you might do well and you might beat the people around you and you feel good about yourself, which is awesome. And then you work up to the next level and you beat more people and all that stuff. But every level costs a lot of money. To get to the level where someone will pay you to be a driver, you're already pretty decent way up the ladder. So your tutelage to get up there is measured in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And you're going to spend that kind of money before you truly know if you're talented or not. Prior to that, you really only think you're talented. It's a belief. It's great to have strong belief in yourself, but it's not until you actually get there that you really know if you're actually talented. And you're around people that have proven themselves, because every time you move up a level, the people around you are champions in their own regions in the level below. So it gets harder and harder and harder. And at the Formula One level, for instance, this notion that you can have a ton of money and come in and buy a seat is preposterous. Because the fact is that there is a lot of families that have the ability to write the check start to finish, and there's lots of them. And they are populating the lower formulas on the way up, that everybody there is very, very talented and wealthy. You have both of them. A lot of people like to talk about driver academies, the Ferrari Academy or the Red Bull Academy or whatever. And yes, they are academies that are focused on getting drivers on the correct path and putting them in front of the correct people. But the big but is that you pay for the privilege of it. You do actually have to pay to be part of these driver academies. I'm not going to say that it's impossible to beat the game, but you are closer to winning the lottery than you are in a systematic way of being able to go racing at the highest possible level without having to spend a lot of money to prove yourself first. Because again, driving is a developed skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And you have to do it in an intelligent way, and you have to drive the right kinds of cars, and you need to be challenged, and all of that costs money. And as nice as the simulators are, and they're getting much, much better, and I know that Nissan did a really cool thing where they got gamers, they put them into racing. Funny thing is that all of those gamers, their careers ended instantaneously when the Nissan money ended, as good as they were. Because some of them were very, very good, but they didn't get picked up by anybody else.
You asked for it, and Auto Tempest now has an app. So head over to your app store now, download it to your phone, and leave them a great review. So now, whether you go to autotempest.com by clicking the link in the description below, or just open up your phone app, you'll be getting access to all the results from all the major listing sites in one place. That is why we love Auto Tempest so much. We appreciate their support of VINwiki over the years, of Car Trek, but most of all because it is exactly where I go every day to find my next car.